Thank you for joining me. I'm outside of my usual location, but I came across something that I thought was important enough to take some time to share. I'll be going through some a video with some text from Japan. I've learned to trust the Japanese for being objective in what they say and do. But it's important to get context. This is not a paper that has been published. And so you have to take the information as being there, but not necessarily corroborated. But I have some important thoughts to add to what I have seen, and I thought I would share it with you. So, just as a fact, this is where it's from. So, this is from X Aussie 17, who is an ex Big Pharma exec, who is exposing Big Pharma, so you can know where he's coming from. Looking at a press conference on the 13th of July, this is 3 days ago, looking at 21 million vaccinated records. And it was presented by a professor, Yasufumi Murakami from Tokyo. And they were looking at a peak of deaths 90 to 120 days post vaccination. So it's important data and the kind of data that we should normally have and get quite urgently. And as I said, I've learned to trust the Japanese for asking hard questions. So I think that this is important. Additionally, here, this is where the information was shared by the people who had done it. It's all in Japanese, as you can see, but they do put some English information with regards to the press conference that they did about the analysis of 21 million COVID-19 vaccine recipients. And it's important to note that they are United Citizens for Stopping mRNA Vaccines. So, again, you can know their position is that they are against the vaccination program. So, that's an important thing to take into context. They looked at the role and the moderator. And I think the important thing about this page that I liked was the fact that they had their presentation slides, which they're going to be showing in the video, were accessible so that I could look at it in a more controlled way. And so this is what it looks like. They talk about the background of the information disclosure. So they got freedom of information in Japan. They looked at the mortality difference by vaccine lots. And they went through all of this, which they will do in their presentation, which I'll share some aspects of it. So I'll be able to come back to this and add some thoughts. So I just thought I would give you the background here. This is what it's all about. And let's listen a little bit more carefully to what was said at this press conference. So let's hear what has been said, and I will jump in. Please let me know if you are hearing this.
Masako Ganaha. Thank you very much for tuning in to our live stream. Now we are going to start online press conference on database disclosure on 21 million COVID injections created by 350 Japanese volunteers using Japanese FOIA. I am today's your host, Masako Ganaha, and also a member of United Citizens for Stopping mRNA Vaccines. Today, through a joint project between the United Citizens for Stopping mRNA Vaccines and the UKOK Alliance, we have obtained vaccination and death information.
Uh, just pausing there, making sure that this is not to do with my system as to why you're not hearing that. Let's just check something here. As I was saying, so as you can see, this this presentation was looking at I'm just going to switch around my screen and make sure that I've got it right. But yes, this presentation had been initially done in June 15th, but because of the attention on it, they thought that they wanted to share it some more. So again, I just want to check and make sure that you can hear this.
So this database is
Please
composed of
just let me know.
21 million. It's 21 million. And let me introduce briefly the group we belong to. It's the United Citizens to Stop mRNA Vaccine. It's an organization consisting of approximately 70,000 supporters.
Yes, so good. So just so that you understand, again, they are clearly against mRNA vaccines. And so they are out as best as possible to try and stop that. And so it's important to take that into consideration. I'll pull you forward to the presentation by the professor when he was talking about the what was happening. It's in Japanese, but the translation is there on the screen as well. So let's hear what he had to say.
My slide is all made in English, so you can easily understand by just reading it. Okay, let me start. 今日お話をするのは、我々が市町村が持っているワクチン接種データを公開していただきまして、それを解析した結果についてお話します。そこでです、どういうデータがあるかと言いますと、一人一人に関して、いつどのロットのワクチンを接種して、いつ亡くなったかというデータが網羅的に収集されています。それでですね、非常に驚くべきデータが、驚くべき現象を我々は見つけることができました。Next slide。ですね、これどういうデータかと言いますと、ワクチン接種後にですね、何日ぐらい接種後に何日ぐらい経ってから、亡くなっているかということを接種した回数ごとに解析をしたものです。Next slide。今しがたのデータは非常に多くのファクターを含みますので、より整理した形でデータをまとめたのがこのスライドです。
And this is also from the data of citizen registered in the local government, and it's quite accurate.
Pausing there a second and just highlighting there. When you look at the slide, what he is showing there is that in effect, there's a peak here at 120 days after people had been given the vaccine when they put all the data together. And again, as I said, this hasn't yet been put in a peer-reviewed paper, so it hasn't yet been corroborated. But it raises some important questions, because the reason why I think that this is such an important point is that when I was arguing early in the pandemic that a 28-day monitoring period, which is what they have after a vaccine, is not adequate when you're looking for autoimmune issues, highlights this point. Because what it would mean is that if you are only looking at 28 days, you would miss autoimmune pathology that could contribute to death. And when you look at the image here, you can see that there were some deaths early on, but not a lot in the first few days. And then it gradually rose to a peak of about 120 days. And I thought that this was very important for us to look at all-cause mortality in order to try and make sense of the fact that many countries that had high vaccination rollout patterns also had excess deaths, even though there was a mortality death, meaning that people had already died from severe COVID. And so the question should be, you would expect their mortality to go down after they have been vaccinated if severe COVID-19 had dropped. And so you clearly had this disconnect, which nobody really tried to clarify. But this kind of information is giving us some more information. Let's see what else they had to say.
How many days? The x-axis is the days, number of days. The death, there was a death timing.
オレンジのスポットは非接種者の、死亡者のデータです。
The orange dots are the unvaccinated people.
青いドットは接種者ということですが、打ってから 間もなくというよりも、接種後120日前後に非常に大きなピークがあることがわかります。
And the blue dots are the vaccinated ones, and you can see, the peak of the death happens around the 120 days timing.
もしそうですね、はい。
Another important point that I will make here is that, interestingly, when you look at when they do come back together, this is after about almost up to 300 days, the blue dots don't go below the orange dots, and the orange dots mean the unvaccinated. And so even though there was significant mortality in the early phase, that mortality debt is still not present by coming below the unvaccinated. And what it means is that, therefore, in this cohort who have already had some degree of excess deaths, it suggests in my mind that there still is a slightly increased risk, even in the period of time going forward after 300. This is almost a year down the line. So these are very important patterns that really need to be clarified. Let's hear a little bit more.
死亡を誘導しないのであるならば、このような山は見えるはずがありません。
If the vaccination is not the real cause of this death, then there will be no this kind of significant peak. Yeah, that's it.
ということで、それでですね、多分このことが本当は非常に多くの人がワクチン接種で亡くなっているにもかかわらず、報告数が極めて少ないことの大きな原因ではないかと我々は考えています。
So this graph shows that this time delay is the reason why many people are not registered as a vaccine death.
ですね、皆さんがワクチン接種をしたドクターだと考えてください。打ったその日、その翌日、1週間以内にその非接種者が亡くなったのであるならば、それはワクチン接種が原因だろうというふうに普通は考えると思います。ところが接種されたお医者さんだったとしてもですね、打ってから3ヶ月とか4ヶ月経って患者さんが亡くなったとしても、それは多分別の原因だろうというふうに思いがちだと思います。
That's a very important point. It's so difficult to correlate vaccine-induced injury when the time frame is not close together. And even beyond the 2 weeks, patients sometimes forget. Doctors may not necessarily think about specifically looking for it. And so it can very easily get missed. 3 to 4 months out, very rarely, except the Japanese who actually do the proper research at considering everything, very often will get missed. It's also the Japanese who picked up a lady who had COVID vaccine-induced myocarditis 6 months after she had been boosted. And that kind of thinking is demonstrating why the Japanese are now leading the world when it comes to identifying patterns that were missed early on in the pandemic. As I explained, is that at the end of the day, if excess mortality remains elevated, there has to be a reason for it. And if you don't have any clear reason, if it's not directly because of COVID, and it's falling within a time frame post-vaccination, you should be able to be looking to correlate those two things. Let's hear some more.
それで問題なのは死亡者のマジョリティ、多くが接種後相当日数が経ってから発生しているという点が、大きな問題で、このことによりワクチン接種による死亡者は実際より非常に少なく計算されてしまうということ。ということですので、先ほど私が計算した61万人という数字と、厚生労働省に届けが出されている死亡者の人数の間に非常に大きなギャップがあるということの理由は、このことによってある程度説明できると思います。じゃあ、may I next slide。これはですね、接種、1回目から5回目の接種、までの接種した人に関して、打ってから、最終的に、接種してから何日後に亡くなったかというふうなことを示した、グラフで、縦軸が死亡者の人数です。
So you can see in this graph that the number of days after the inoculation and how many people died, this is the x-axis, and you can see on the right hand side how many inoculation days people has gotten.
それでこのグラフを見ると明らかなことは、接種の回数が増えるごとに、亡くなる人たちの最大、亡くなる人たちが亡くなるまでの時間がだんだん短くなっていくと思います。
The tendency is that the more you have received the inoculation, the timing of the death after the inoculation is getting shorter.
And again, that's an important point. And what I'm trying to do is try and make sense of the patterns. And based on my autoimmune paradigm, where the issue is not so much about a direct impact of the vaccine, but that it triggers autoimmune responses. And critically, if you are having IgG4, which reduces the protection or increases the risk of infection, what you can be seeing in terms of that spike is a combination of vaccine mediated immune responses combined with the reinfections. That's what I call the COVID storm. That would make perfect sense and would explain why that timeline is at that place. This is pretty important stuff that really needs to be clarified. Here is the summary slide as to what they had found.
Publication of the Danish group.
それでですね、我々はそのドット差のデータに関してはデータベース化しておりまして、今現在公開できるような方向に持っていくことを努力をしています。
We are making right now the database for the lot specific difference, and we'll be publishing it soon.
もう一つの非常に大きな発見は、接種してから数ヶ月の3ヶ月から4ヶ月目に死亡者のピークが現れるということで、このことがワクチン接種の被害を、実際よりも小さく見せている原因だと思います。
And also,
And so, just to summarize some of the points here as we tie this together, again, I think it's very important to understand the pathophysiology. And one of the huge gaps we have is the autopsies. What would have been ideal is for the majority of those deaths to have had autopsies done. And then we could see what the mechanism of organ injury is associated with it. But as I mentioned before, if you only focus on the issue around the mRNA, what then happens is that you will miss the potential autoimmune complications that will present later down the line. So 3 to 4 months after vaccination is not a direct toxic effect. This is something else. My feeling is that it's a combination of immune responses that are unusual with reinfection that creates that concept that I have said with regards to the COVID storm. And when we think about the implications of that, it helps us to understand why going forward we are likely to see ongoing issues like that. What I've got there on the screen is my mock up of the COVID storm. Vaccine immune priming combined with recurring COVID infection, a blast of immune responses targeting multiple organs. And so, therefore, you end up with a storm that's not the same as the cytokine storm in severe COVID, but is enough to cause people to get very sick and potentially die or end up in hospital. What that graph would not have shown is the amount of people who were probably admitted to hospital in the weeks or months afterwards. These kinds of statistical relevance is very difficult to find, and it is going to be very relevant to the kind of pressure that hospitals are under in highly vaccinated regions. There is a problem here, and one that sadly should have been addressed more openly and more honestly from the scientific community. I've always maintained that the fact that excess deaths were elevated since 2022 in the Euromomo data, not investigating it would always come back to bite us. Luckily, we have people across the world who are forcing the question. Now, as I said, that was social media. We haven't seen the data, but it is forcing everyone to have to find evidence that what they are seeing in Japan is not the reality in other countries. So what we would want now is a freedom of information to collate data from other countries to see whether or not there was a similar pattern within 3 to 4 months, a peak of deaths for people who have been vaccinated. Critical kind of information for us to assess, and it really is the time for us to do this kind of work. So, hope you found this valuable, and I'll try to keep you updated on the latest news and information as I continue with this scientific journey. Have a great evening.